How do you measure the worth of a person's life? People around me have been having birthdays, some of them what are often called significant milestones. And sometime during this year I'm going to have another birthday and I'll be 67 years old. As we get older, as the amount of time ahead of us is significantly less than the time behind us, it's not surprising that some of us begin to ask questions about the worth or value of our life. Have we lived a good life? I'll consider what good might mean a little later. But have we made our mark on the world? Will we, when we die, have left the world a better place? Of course, all of these terms require close examination, and it's quite a rabbit hole that we're proceeding down if we choose to do this. I suspect that if I apply these questions too closely to my own life, I will precipitate a serious existential crisis. I'm not sure I actually want to know the answer. I comfort myself by saying that these questions are probably ultimately unanswerable, or at best will have very subjective answers, a claim which itself, of course, requires closer examination. I suspect that all this thinking can't be good for one's mental health. But perhaps I can at least try to address some of these questions in a theoretical sense, without applying it too closely to my own life. This feels a little bit safer, and perhaps that's why I much prefer theoretical rather than personal conversations. I suppose when we try to value or evaluate a person's life, we're ultimately asking whether their final contribution or the sum of their contributions is positive or negative in the world, or maybe neutral. If my heart were weighed at the end, would it be heavier than the feather of Ma'at, and would Anubis feed it to Amit? It occurs to me, though, that when we ask whether a person has left behind something good, a positive legacy, there are at least two ways in which that question may be approached. The first is ethical, and the second is aesthetic. When considered ethically, we're really asking whether that person has been, on balance, a morally good or bad person. Is the world they leave behind improved by their having existed, in the sense that there is now less, or at least no more, evil in the world? Has that person led, on balance, a morally upright life? This is usually what's at stake in the Judeo-Christian tradition. Not that being good is a necessary or sufficient condition for entering the kingdom of heaven within this tradition, but the aim is to live a morally good life, regardless of this final outcome. This is what ethics is about, discerning and doing the right thing. There will, of course, be intense debate about what the good life requires, what the right thing is. For instance, does it only require that we do no harm, or does it prescribe positive actions that need to be performed? But this is only one way in which the worth of a life might be evaluated. The second approach is the aesthetic approach. Aesthetics is concerned with the question of beauty, with our senses, rather than with good and evil. The prominent Swiss theologian Karl Barth was captivated by the music of Mozart. He waxed eloquently about Mozart's music. In Mozart's music, he once said in a lecture, "The sun shines, but without burning or weighing upon the earth." Mozart brought beauty into the world. What, if at all, do I care about Mozart's behaviour, by which I mean his moral behaviour? Was Mozart a good man in the ethical sense? Frankly, who cares? Can anyone seriously doubt that Mozart left the world a better place? So does one of these ways of measuring the worth of a person's life outweigh the other? Is it more important to morally improve the world, or is it more important to bring more beauty into the world? Is this in fact truly a dichotomy, or are these two ways of being good actually related in some way to each other? While Immanuel Kant, who we've met before on this channel, separated ethics and aesthetics, Ludwig Wittgenstein, the early 20th century philosopher, once said that ethics and aesthetics are one. Of course, to fully understand this debate, we would first have to dip into what precisely each of these philosophers actually means by these terms. Too much for this channel, too much for this brain today. Perhaps it's an admission that will condemn me in the eyes of some, but when I think of great people, I tend to think of those who've made the world more beautiful through art, music, literature, etc., rather than those who have made moral improvements. My head tells me that I ought to hold the ethical in higher regard than the aesthetical, but my heart will have none of that. I'm not sure, in any case, that my own life measures up particularly well, no matter which scale we use.